This week on RSBANDB Update, we break down Modkeeper's look ahead as well as some of the Necromancy content on the way. The combat beta continues with ranged reigning supreme. We also discuss how it plays at various bosses and ask if it's too much while also answering your questions. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 971, recorded February 1st and 2nd, 2024. Ranged Supremacy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. This week, we got a bit of a hybrid affair of the show going on because we wanted to bring the latest from the Modkeeper newsletter, letter to the community, and live stream that happened on Friday. But as most folks might know, we record on Thursday. So joining me to discuss Modkeeper's post and the immediate future of RuneScape, Pernasius is here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Yep, Pernasius, longtime RSBANDB Update contributor, and just all round general do-it-aller in RS.
Lover of the show.
Things. Yeah. So
jack of all trades, master of none.
That's a perfect way of putting it. If you guys want to follow along, we do have full show notes available at update.show. You can also find our community Discord over at update.show/Discord, and the friends chat is BitsBytes. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't give a big, huge thank you to our experienced tier Patreon supporters who allow us to do RSBANDB Update each and every week. Without them, the show would truly be probably impossible. So this week, I'd like to thank Amos Reed, Andrew C., Drama Free, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Ricky A., Ripeth, Runestar, and the Naked Captain. And of course, also, I'll just mention before we get into the meat of the matter this week, our annual general survey is still running. So if you have not done that yet, head on over to update.show/survey and fill that out. It'll help us guide the direction Update takes in 2024. And if you want, you can throw your name into a pool to be entered to win what is now one of 4 bonds. A listener has graciously donated another bond to that pool, so we have 4 bonds on offer now for a raffle, and a random cosmetic override scroll as well will be given out to the grand prize winner of our survey raffle. So if you want to complete the survey, you want to tell us anything about Update, anything, really anything, just visit update.show/survey, and you can also be entered to win a bond there. But we need to dive straight into this right now. So, looking at this, a look ahead from Modkeeper. I'm just going to summarize the top level items here. February, a collection of Necromancy content and improvements, including a new quest in the city of with 4 new pieces of Moonstone jewelry, some VFX and art polishing moments for gear, which also includes dyeable tier 95 Necromancy armor, as well as changes to protection glyphs. And Philippe will be moving to the city of and that came from the live stream. That's February. Then in March, they want to launch the combat update with subsequent beta coming in the next week or so, dealing with some of the things we're going to talk about later on in the podcast. And also in March is the Easter event, which they say they learned a lot from the vibes about the Christmas village, so they're going to be aiming to make Easter better than ever with that. And that's kind of it for February, March.
Yep.
You can hear the pin drop.
Yeah. I obviously, being in Australia, their streaming is at like 4 or 5 a.m. here, so I wasn't actually up to see it, but I did read the post, and just before we got on the show, I sort of watched the first 10 or 15 minutes of
before
it.
They got into combat Q&A.
Yeah. I love a quest. So, owls, not a big fan of owls.
54
but
necromancy
hey,
requirement for this, so,
yes,
that...
and obviously access to
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fairly low level and entry level, I'd say.
So,
it comes with a new achievement and
yeah.
such, but...
So the idea on that is, this sounds as though it was a game jam quest, and it's not the kickoff of a new storyline, which I think is interesting. So we're still kind of in that pause phase after Zamorak.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it sounds like just a fun little quest, a little cute quest. It starts off with an owl, and I was saying, as you sort of go through, more owls come into the city. So obviously, there's going to be new achievements and such that are going to come there. The Moonstone jewelry to craft, 4 pieces. Obviously, we're going to be getting some. I would say they're going to be necromancy themed ones.
Yeah.
They said some skilling, some combat ones, so maybe something to help you with.
And that's always an interesting place to go in terms of gear diversity with jewelry, because I remember last time they added a piece of jewelry, it was unmitigated dollop of power creep. I'm talking about the essence of finality. Of course, everybody loves them, and everybody has multiple of them if they're doing high tier PVM. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, the question is, what's going to be the balance on this? Is it going to be usable? Is it going to be utility, or is it going to be, so over the top where you got 1 or 2 of these things that's going to be must slot?
Yeah, well, from what they were talking about, so you're sort of saying mid to sort of high tier. So I don't think we're going to get something sort of essence of finality quality, power creep. But for someone mid range or even sort of chasing that 99 to 120, I mean, I'd say it's probably going to be something that's going to excite those people. The problem is so many people now already have 99 or 120 because, the first 6 months people rush for those type of things. So for the ones who didn't rush, great. But again, for the rest of us, unless it's something, as you said, sort of gives a really good sort of power boost, we'll have to wait and see how it's accepted by the community there.
Yeah, and I had to do a double take when I heard this, because I remember listening to this, and I was like, did they just say this is going to be going to a new earring slot?
Yeah, I missed that. So that's going to be I mean, I thought we'd get more rings before we start poking things in our ears, but hey, we are in 2024, and people do different things these days. And belly button rings coming next year.
Oh, that's an interesting expansion. Imagine the cosmetic opportunities available for that.
Oh God.
Oh my God!
Have the eyebrow pierced and your lip done, and big nose, big nose ring.
There's lots of other places for jewelry to be added in game, is what I'm hearing.
They could go to Prince Albert.
So, and
yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
Sorry, just to say, I mean, great. I love them getting on there and doing these type of things, but I mean, you pointed it out as well, and I thought the same thing. They didn't have that.
There was no energy.
Exactly, there was no enthusiasm. There's a lot of umming and ahhing, and can we really talk about that? And they just very lackluster. I don't know if they're tired, end of the week, and they're just exhausted.
Well, that's true. It's like 4 or 5 p.m. on a Friday, which
exactly.
So commend them for going out there and doing that.
Oh, of course, yeah, no, and that's it. I mean, this is something they're doing in their own time, type thing, and for our benefit. So I don't want to criticize them.
Yeah,
for that,
I do want to.
They just didn't have that
spark,
that enthusiasm for it to say, hey, listen, this is what we got coming, type thing.
Yeah,
that you sort of expect when you're promoting something.
I just do want to pull on the thread from one of the other pieces of content with here before we get more into the meta analysis of this. Yep. There's also going to be a change coming for protection glyphs, which changes them so that they extend the duration of random events. Because you remember, protection glyphs were useless on Necromancy launch because there was a negative aspect to Necromancy that was removed before the skill shipped, and we just got these protection glyphs that really did nothing. So
did nothing, yeah, exactly.
So that's going to be interesting to see. for people who want to, just slow things down a bit and have a bit more time.
Well, that's it. And for people, I mean, again, an access thing for someone like Tanis, that may be a very good one, because you'll actually start being able to see and interact with those those little random event things.
Yeah, and here's the thing with all this, and this was pointed out in chat in the RSBANDB Discord and other Discords, is that everything that was announced here is game jam level. And there is
other than a quest.
Well,
patch
yeah.
note level, really.
No. Even the quest was game jam. This was Mod Luma's game jam.
Yeah. No, I'm saying patch note level. It's not not a headliner event. Yeah.
Right. And the question is, what's happening here behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and our community is very good at maybe trying to glean some ideas into this. And one thing that was suggested, and community management could never say yes to this, is that maybe following the backlash of Hero Pass and whatnot in September, Jagex was forced to course correct in such a way that we aren't aware of the magnitude of that. I imagine a course correction similar to what happened after Menaphos, but they're not telling us how hefty that U-turn was. Of course,
yeah. They probably had another
because what other year have we gone without a headline piece of content until April?
Well, that's it.
I mean, we have the Candor and graphical update, and that's going to be the biggest update of Q1. We need to be 100% honest with that. The folks behind that, Mod Blackwitch, Alex, and everybody involved in that, hit that out of the park. And for all intents and purposes, that's what I consider the headline update of January. And, they're packaging this necromancy stuff into a headline for February. But, you have to go back many, many years, probably, prior to, I'd say probably even prior to the Sixth Age, to see a time where the content updates were, so small that there was no headliner, for each month.
Yeah. And again, I don't mind that. As a personal thing, I don't mind that if they have to take a step back and say, hey, because it gives you time to catch up on a lot of the content that you've sort of been racing through. So I would have preferred this behind the scenes to be a quarterly thing. They should have really brought this out, as you said, at the start of January, because those graphical updates.
And give us a bit, huge. Just a little bit of a preview of something big on the horizon.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say. We are heading, obviously it's the end of winter. We're heading into sort of spring over there. Just give us a hint, something big coming for spring, something big coming for summer. This type of thing. Just something to sort of wet the whistle, and that way people aren't going to complain so much.
Because we have a very good idea of what's happening in Old School for the entire year. And into 2025, even with sailing.
Yep. And again, we are looking at two totally different games development-wise because of the graphics and everything that has to go into RS3 as opposed to Old School. Obviously, it is going to be easy to do that type of thing in a game like Old School, but still, just a little hint. You don't have to say it's going to be here September. You just say, looking at summer
and beyond March, we're working on this. This is a bit of a preview of what it is, or even here's just the name of the content, like they named Necromancy at the start of last year.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the type of thing that I'm looking for. Because
behind the scenes. And maybe this speaks to my background and the business side, is that if this was a publicly held company right now that was having earnings and shareholders and seeing them based on and their reactions based on what was announced here, this is the kind of announcement that you would do after the markets had closed, because
Yes.
there is nothing in here that would make share prices go up and have investor confidence into the future. And obviously the investors, and I say investor confidence, I know the investors involved with Jagex are, you know, more concerned with their bottom lines and all that. I'm not saying that these updates affect those investors. I'm saying the stakeholders, the people who play the game, us, the players, have to have a confidence driver on this. That's the way I'm framing this right here.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know you have to appease the financiers of the game, but
right, and they do that, and they do that through this thing.
We are the ones who are investing our time,
and they do this through that thing called Treasure Hunter and that, you know, Christmas season that was there, because I know tons of people who bought keys, and even with, you know, the cosmetic updates or the cosmetics that came out on Treasure Hunter last week, I know again people buying tons of keys to get through all those.
And again, I mean, I come from a business and marketing background, so I have no issue with them doing that. And that's why, you know, with the Hero Pass, you know, the failures that they did on that, where they took out the daily challenges and then locked the buffs behind Premier Club. I mean, that was whoever came up with that should have been fired.
Yeah.
That was a huge mistake.
And again,
it could have been
we don't know. Maybe heads did roll after Hero Pass, and maybe that's part of the problem here.
Well, exactly. That's what I was going to say, because it would be about the end of Feb, March that we would have had that next iteration of Hero Pass.
Yeah, that's true.
So that would have been on the thing, and they've had to scrap that entirely. They can't bring back Yak Track because they said,
well,
you know,
also
even
remember
people
this.
Are talking about it.
remember this. Hero Pass was supposed to go one into the other, right? So the first one ended, you know, December 4th or whatever. Then we had the Christmas event. So in theory, you would have had another one picking up in January here, running through the end of March.
Yeah.
Voila.
That's it. And I mean, you know, again, I mean, once bitten, twice shy type thing.
Because just imagine it being different in that if you had a battle pass style system running from January through March, then you can get away with doing for your January update, community hit list, graphical update, February quest plus Necromancy game jam, March combat plus Easter. Then you can get away with that.
Exactly, and that's where I think the big hole we've got in this quarter is because of the reevaluation there.
And if you look back at September through December, it's very much the same path that we're on right now, except there was Hero Pass running through that, and we were finishing a storyline. So without with the absence of finishing a storyline and the absence of a battle pass, you get a similar kind of content cadence to what we got here through January, February, March.
Yep, definitely.
And you know, I honestly think that we just hit the nail on the head here of what's going on with this, in that, you know, obviously, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, things like battle passes are not headline content, but without completing a quest storyline and without having something using the dreaded filler word in there, you get a feeling here where there's practically nothing.
That's it. And that's where I always said those little bottle quests, they should always have 2 or 3 of those up their sleeves for when something does go on, they can just drop those in. You know, we had that big thing about bottle quests, and they did it for a year, and then we really got nothing after that.
Right. Like, imagine if there was
that's a perfect spot for that type of situation.
Like, imagine if you had a bottle quest, you know, done, you know, 70 to 80% done, then you just needed to QA it, and you could have it out in a shorter, you know, period of time, and you could, you know, just scratch so many little storylines with that. Because if you think about it, like, if we really think about it, the You Are It quest was kind of in that same bandwagon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that was such a unique and fun quest to do.
But
as we said, I mean, it is hard because we've got to understand that when you are working on something, especially something with a graphical commitment and such that RS3 does over OSRS,
yeah, you can't just
you are
crank these
looking at
things out.
3 or 4 months ahead that you're working on.
Right.
So
right.
when
and
with all the sort of blowback on Hero Pass, where you have to throw that out, all of a sudden you've got to find something to replace it. You're not going to do that in 4 or 6 weeks. It is going to take time, so you are going to have a hole.
And I forget, I think it was Mod Jack who said this at one point. A small update now for RS3 takes minimum 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish.
Yeah, exactly. That's a small update. So yeah. So, but I mean, I think with the Easter event and such, and again, that obviously is going to be right at the end of March. Another little quest. I know some people are sort of worried about it because if they base it, just basically reskinning the Christmas events, a lot of those cosmetics. I mean, I was in the same boat. There was only one cosmetic I needed to unlock. I went back daily.
Christmas was more about the environment and the feeling.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
think they'll do a little
more
for Easter.
On that. Yeah. And, I feel like if you're looking at, the big three of the holiday events for RS, Christmas is the biggest. Then Halloween, then Easter.
Correct.
So as you get to the ones that are, less important, you can have more, license with them to kind of push the boundaries on it. Whereas I think what they did for Christmas was, just the mold that they need to fit. Everybody's got their favorite Halloween. And, when it comes to Easter, just, do something fun with the Easter Bunny. And
my favorite Easter is still the Slisky chocolate event.
Oh, my God. I hated that.
I love that one.
That was the chocolate factory one, right?
That's the one, yeah.
Oh my God!
Little Oompa Loompa.
Yeah,
but it was a fun little quest that's what I like about those events when they have just a fun little quest thrown in, and that's why I thought Easter as Christmas, even though I didn't participate heavily in it. It was still a success to me because I got that little quest that I wanted. Yeah. There was something that I could go and do every day if I wanted to.
It was a community
exactly.
Aspect.
I'm someone who tries and unlocks everything at the time it's released, but a lot of people aren't. So it gave a lot of people that opportunity
looking at
to get a lot of those cosmetics.
Right, looking at the at the community schedule here, it would be wonderful if the City of Quest brought people back to because that kind of died down a bit after the the Necromancy hype did. And obviously March, Easter, another community hub. But I just want to go on one last thing here before we wrap this up and join Tanis and Bears for the combat beta discussion this week. So they said last year we made a concerted effort to deepen the ways we work with the community. They increased communication from their team, which, I mean, given the state we're in, I think people would question that. They introduced player-led QOL updates with the community hit list. Okay, sure, that was well received. Reintroduced the beta worlds for combat updates. Okay. And Modkeeper says that he is looking forward to our involvement, the players' involvement in what we're cooking up for the coming year. And tying that in with the survey, the team is busy digesting everything that has been told to them and is working on some exciting new pitches for us. Exciting new pitches for us. Maybe even some stuff that can be demoed at RuneFest.
Yeah.
Are we going and see with that? It's like, are we going for a hybrid approach here, kind of like how they do it at Old School without the polls? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, those surveys are great to get community feedback and such. I think these beta worlds, though, they need to have just a little, if you go and spend 10 hours testing the combat system there, and I don't mean going over there and just sitting there skilling. If you're actually, doing combat, you can unlock just a little cosmetic to say, hey, I was a tester on this type thing, just to get that involvement in it, because I don't know enough about combat to go over there and test it. I'll just go, I'll just go with whatever anyone puts in and go with the flow on combat side of things, because I'm not great at combat. but I think we need to try and encourage those people of all levels to go over and give it a go. So you're not just getting
Oh
those
yeah. Oh yeah.
those sort of high
And
level
and I
PVMers
know
in there.
this because we pre-recorded this and we talked about that. In particular, that most of the feedback has been on the high end, but everybody needs to go over there and test. Because if you don't, then, you might have something that you like to use that, you don't get to give your feedback on. But
Yep. And if you don't test it and something goes out that you liked, well, that can only be on you because, hey, you didn't give the feedback.
yeah. But I think we'll leave this here, and I think there's a wider discussion that needs to be had on whether there needs to be, some kind of grander message, but I'm not necessarily sure on how that should be framed. So, folks, let us know if that's something that you're interested in hearing about. But in the meantime, before we get too far ahead here, I want to thank this week's Patreon supporters who make this episode go. I'd like to thank Alaska, Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Anatoly D, Andrew C, Arvid L, Chubura, Daniel W, Dominic R, Drama Free, Duramax, Free Milk, G Hammy, Guy LaFleur, Jacob G, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jeebus, Jesse W, Jim M, Kesky, Killer Snowball, Lemon Lodge, Ling01, Luminos, Nate the Great, Parnassius, Renhawk, Ricky A, Rippeth, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirtpants, Thule, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Tom V, Ukulele Steve, and Zant. Of course, you can learn more about this at patreon.com/RSBANB. There you can sign up for as little as $1 a month, and in doing so, you gain access to an entire catalog of bonus shows that we've put out for, the better part of, I think, close to 4 or 5 years now at this point. And we got one cooking right now behind the scenes about farming. And, I said this last week. We had never done a farming monthly bit before, and I'm like,
that amazes me.
Wow, we'd never done that before.
Your favorite skill, and we haven't touched it.
I know,
before.
and I threw this in, and I cooked this up, and the question, and then we have the team working on that right now, and lo and behold, that one won. So we're going to be sitting down to record that one next week, talking about the history of the farming skill, its ecosystems, and why and what makes it a skill. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can sign up and get access to that when that goes out for as little as $1 a month. We also have last month's special on the Slayer task list, Hot or Not, which was definitely a fun one to record. Got some good feedback there on everybody's Slayer masters that they like or dislike, and also the one right before that was RuneScape's Graphical Future, but we got all sorts of ones in there. Legacy mode, lore ones, you name it, the whole gamut of bonus shows if that's interesting to you. We also have a VIP tier where for $3 a month you can get a rank on Discord, which includes chat channel access, a mention on the podcast at the start of the month, and high quality stereo versions of the show. And if you want to give the ultimate gift, we have our Insider tier for $5 a month, where you receive a shout-out on the podcast each and every week and gain exclusive access to the outtakes that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. So big, huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It means the world to us. Patreon.com/RSBNB. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right, and with that, we're going to just move on over right now and join Tanis and Bears and talk about the combat beta and some patch notes and how that's landing this week. So we should just dive straight into the combat beta then, shouldn't we, for this? And, we ended off last week's discussion here talking about how range just felt so much better. Slayer felt pretty much the same, right, Tanis?
Yeah.
Nothing much to write home about there. I had great luck with ranged, and you presumably had great luck with ranged as well, which we're gonna talk about as we dive into this. But are there any major changes that are listed in any of the style specific things or the specs or anything that you want to highlight, Bears, that really is standing out to you at this point?
No style specific things. I think Magic is the one that gets the least amount of changes. So that means they must think Magic is in a good spot, which I don't disagree with. Range just gets a couple small things, and then same with Melee.
Yeah,
So
Melee's
there's nothing too
still
crazy.
very much. I feel like the style that's going to raise eyebrows if you're not able to put your all into it, and it just doesn't produce as easily as the other two. Is the sense I get, right?
Right. I if I pull out my Melee reset right now, there's maybe like 4 or 5 things of food. If I pull out my range one, it's like 15 to 20 things of food. Like, just like the amount of switches and stuff you need for Melee to be not even competitive is insane.
Yeah, yeah, and see that's the thing that we really see with this is that the bulk of the changes, and this is what I felt because I prior to Necromancy, you could say was a ranged main when it came to RSPVM, and I felt good about that, and I felt really good coming out of the beta last week, and that's why I thought, okay, we got to get somebody who is going to take this to Solak, somebody who's going to take this to Zamorak, and maybe some other places too, and kind of just see what is this doing on the high end? Because if it is, coming close to Necromancy for me, and I was never that good at my ranged mechanics before Necromancy, geez, what's this going to do for somebody else? Is that kind of the sense that you're walking away with here this week too?
Yeah. I did some Zamorak 250%. And in the live game, I usually what happens, you charge a pad, you get one auto, and then you get the spec. In the live game, I was getting that one auto and then phasing before the spec, so I wasn't getting the spec. In the beta, most of the time I wasn't even getting that one auto. So just like the amount of damage you're doing just gets you that extra 20, 30,000 needed to skip that extra auto
and that's
attack.
huge, and that's huge when you think about it. Very huge, because we're talking about, like you said, the 20 to 30k, and that's the damage potential cap of increasing that hit cap from 12k, 15k, sometimes up to 30k. You combine that with changes to the critical strike system and critical damage system, and you start to see where this system starts to sink. Is there anything on either of those that you kind of want to lean into that now that you've had a chance to experience, 30k ranged crits?
Yeah. Well, first off, very selfishly, I loved seeing, oh, that's a 30k. Oh, that was 4 30ks in my SGP. Like, it looks cool. Balance wise, not as cool. But
which we'll get
it's
to
a lot of fun.
because you have to question, is that healthy, right?
Correct.
Because there's nothing like the SGB.
No, it's so busted. So like the damage cap, that's the one thing that will help Melee in this is, every single time I use my overpowered, it's dealing 2 12ks on Berserk. Now it'll deal 18 to 20k, so like you get that extra 6 to 10,000 damage out of that. So like that's where Melee is going to get the most boost from this.
Yeah,
but
and I feel like Melee's
range
problem in general is more of a philosophical thing because it was the bleed skill before, and it necessitates those 4 to 6 switches that people always use to make it sing.
Yeah. With range, you don't hit that. I mean, SGB is kind of its own thing, but outside of SGB and outside of bulk spec, you're not going to be consistently hitting over that 12k mark. So
which is
those two,
which is in line with ranged identity again of being that consistent damage dealer, which is what it always did.
Yes, exactly. So if you take away those two, it's very balanced. You're still getting that 9Ks from 9 to 10K damage from rapid fire, which is nice. You're still getting a decent amount from snapshot. So, if you, I don't know, maybe for range they have to look into tweaking SGB and bulk spec to get those so they're not so overpowered.
Yeah, and there was a section in the notes here that they did tune down the Bow of the Last Guardian already. From previous betas, and based on what we see here, it's obviously still performing very, very well with that.
When I was under Death Swiftness, it was hitting consistent 15k plus, and then
I mean, Necromancy doesn't even do that unless you're fingering, right?
Correct.
So,
what'd you say, Shane?
I said Necromancy doesn't even do that unless you're using Finger of Death.
That's not what you said.
I know. I'm choosing to move on. Anyways. So you see we're painting a picture here that it comes down to, like you said, the critical strike, critical damage, hit cap as being the primary things that is really carrying this thing forward, plus the SGB and the Bow of the Last Guardian is probably, would you say, what's putting ranged over the top?
Yeah, I think in the beta, range, I think you can make an argument Necromancy is still better. I'd willingly listen and could, be persuaded. But so I think it's pretty even with Necromancy. Magic is about where it was before the beta.
Yeah, and my question with Magic is, should Magic stay where it was at before the beta with, 4 ticking and switching between staff and wands? Or should there be a way to do more with Magic on the level of what we're, basically should Magic be pushed up without the 4 ticking? Because I don't know, I don't know how you explain 4 ticking to somebody and get somebody to do this end game style of Magic.
Yeah.
I know how you would physically do it, but I don't know how you communicate that, one of the quirks of the game is how you maximize the skill.
Yeah, I personally rarely 4 tick. I definitely notice the difference when I do of damage, but to me, it's not worth the extra effort.
It's not worth the hassle. Yeah.
But one of my good friends who I PVM with all the time, he's constantly 4 ticking. So, I'm not going to tell him that he needs to stop, sort of thing. So I'm of 2 beliefs on that. And part of me is like, well, we reward people for putting in more effort, or are they really putting in more effort, or are they just exploiting something that really shouldn't even be in the game? I don't know.
Right, and I mean the window to change 4 ticking was years ago.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, the latest you could have changed that was after the Fractured Staff came out, I think. I think that was probably the latest that you could have changed that. Because it really does lead to that identity of that style. So we're painting a picture here. Necromancy followed close behind by ranged, and then followed a little bit further back by Magic, and then melee way back at the back. Is that how you'd put it, or?
Yeah, I think so. And that it just comes down to melee. Just with range Magic, you can stand 10 feet away from the boss or 10 steps away from the boss and still deal damage. At melee, you have to be right there and close, and there are some bosses that's not ideal at.
No.
It kind of takes away the ability to melee.
Yeah. And do you think the differential between, and keep in mind beta, everything's subject to change, do you think the difference between where Magic is at right now and where ranged is at, do you think that's too great in that one of them needs to move one way or the other?
In the beta, I would say range probably needs to move down.
Okay. Then I
just think there's too much damage with top tier SGB, CB, bulk spec.
Yeah. And then we get to, the question with that as well, for bringing range down. Should Necromancy be brought down a bit too from where we're at? And then you get into the whole philosophical discussion, which the listeners of this podcast will know. You guys have made it quite clear to me. And this is literally the truth to people who aren't aware of this. Ever since, October, November, I have had one person a week, at least, message me from the audience saying what kind of feats they have done with PVM as a result of Necromancy. So you guys have made yourselves loud and clear on that, and I think that's definitely something we need to champion going forward, but at the same time, we also need to say, okay, well, what does that do for all the old bosses out there to the point where, there's bosses where you could just take down with one set of death skulls? Obviously not the time to have that discussion right now in the beta, but it definitely does raise a lot of questions about where these other styles are going to land going forward. And, I'm going to say something controversial here. What if range just stays where it was? And they brought magic up a bit so that you didn't need, to 4-tick to get extra DPS out of it.
So
I know that would push lots of people away, but that's why I said controversial, but I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm not against that. I'm under the belief that at no point in time will all 3, now 4 combat styles ever be completely balanced, right? Like, there'll be a change to melee that all of a sudden that will be the best in the game. Like when they added Greater Barrage and the codexes from ED2, melee took a huge jump up. And
yeah,
I mean, when I started PVMing, I learned how to Solak with melee, like Trin Masterwork, DGS, and Dragors. That's all you needed.
Which I also have to say, that was the first, tier 90 odd power armor set that you could make yourself.
Yep.
So there's that too with it. But continue on.
So then, I mean, after that, people discovered how broken backcriminal bolts are. And then all of a sudden, everyone's using Ascension crossbows and Ruby bolts and Onyx and Hydrix bolts. And then that was the meta. And now it went to Magic and FSOA. And that stayed the meta for a while. And then Necromancy. So, I really think it's just going to keep rotating. I think that's fine. I think that's healthy for the game.
Yeah, so with that, then you could push, ranged to be out front or at least very close with Necromancy. And, dare I say it, that's what balance is, where, you can, in effect, choose how to play your game. And, I just want to also just bring in a comparison here from other MMOs, specifically going to quote ESO at this point, Elder Scrolls Online, is that at the very high end of it, if you're mechanically sound, the difference between any of the 6 classes out there is going to be at most probably 8 to 10k DPS at the very high end. And that's way, 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 way more. This 130, 140 odd K DPS people are pushing out at the ultra high end. That's way more than you need to complete any of the content in the game. So the point is that's how that game strikes balance. There's 6 classes that are, for all intents and purposes, balanced. So, there should be, somebody should have the ability out there to ask a question for RS. Why can the 4 combat styles not be balanced? And I realize and I realize it's not as simple to do as snapping your fingers, because people have huge gear investments and whatnot, but it's an interesting thought exercise. And I'm in no way saying right now that Magic should come up to where ranged is at. I think it would be an interesting thing to think about and maybe an interesting thing to do, but I don't necessarily know that would be the right thing for the game. So this is largely just a thought exercise at this point. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a lose either way. Depending which way you look at it, it could be a win either way. I mean, if you're someone who learned to PVM with Necromancy, I mean, those people
that's going to be your comfy spot.
Yep, and those people are now doing Solak, they're now doing AOD, they're now doing Zammy, and they're happy and they're explored more of the game, and that's great. But at the same time, there are people who saw Necromancy, saw how much damage it was putting out, and realized the bosses are no longer fun doing that, and they stopped playing. So I think there's a balance there, and if you nerf Necromancy, you make the people who just learned all these bosses very upset, but you gain the player base back who was playing before Necromancy.
And then it becomes a community. Then it becomes
answer.
A question of community at that point too, in terms of which is going to drive the engagement metrics for Jagex and whatnot, right? So
yeah,
because the complexity behind it shows that, right now we don't have any necromancy switches in terms of weapons or armor. It's literally plug and play, and away you go. All you got to do is, learn your living death rotation and a few other things, and you're off to the races there. Where with ranged, and this was something I asked you in pre-show, if you want to get a lot of the Bow of the Last Guardian, you can optimize to the tick, right? But you don't do that, and you're still getting wonderful results.
Yeah, with my range gear, the only switch I bring is a EOF switch for Sammy. So I don't bring crossbows, I don't bring chins, nothing. Just a EOF, and that's for ECB.
Yeah. Which, for people unaware, that has the split soul special attack in it.
Yep. And in the kills that I recorded for this, I didn't even use it. So I did not switch weapons, ring, book, anything once that whole kill.
Yeah, so let's actually dive into some of these kills a bit here in terms of what you found different. Let's start with the Archglacer. In terms of where things were on live and where they were on the beta. I'll get the beta one up for people to see. But what was the biggest thing you found at Archglacer? Because the interesting thing I see here is that your kill time was practically even.
Yeah, I think they were within like 2 to 3 seconds of each other, which blew my mind. In the beta, I felt like I didn't rely on the poison ticks as much as I did in the real game now.
I assume you were stacking those with Wen arrows?
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah, right.
So, but like I felt like I would SGB and it would deal, 4 hits times 12, whatever that is. 48,000, yeah. Like pretty consistently in the beta. If I did that with big arrows in the real game, it would not do that. It would be closer to the 8 to 9 per hit.
Right.
So I felt like I wasn't relying on the poison as much.
Okay, so more the raw damage, and then obviously that poison still ramps up all the way through the kill too.
It still does a ton of damage. I'm guessing the same kill time came down to just mechanic luck. I don't know because
Archglacer is 100% random in terms of how it does it. Minus doing the same thing back to back. So
yep. But yeah, I think I noticed just the raw damage that was coming out of range.
Yeah, and the thing that really stands out to me on this is that, and this shows kind of how I PVM. Just watching this here, I see that your action bar is immediately more readable. But when I PVM, my eyes I never seem to really be on my action bar and the cooldown. So this is actually the first time I'm actually having a deep look at what the ticking cooldowns look like here. So that's interesting just from an observer perspective on this.
Yeah, I actually spend a lot of time looking at it. Once I get familiar with the boss, I know what's going on. It's something I can look at my action bar a little bit more. So, I'm seeing that, G-Rico's coming off cooldown. I'm going to queue that up real quick. I need to put some bleeds on. And to be clear,
you're doing manual here because it looks like you have a revolution window up, but I see you're activating things manually just for anybody who's seeing that.
Yes, I have Revo on for basics still, but I, for the most part, do cast them manually.
Yeah, which is, I think that's the middle of the road way to go on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other big takeaways from Archglacer? Which, again, same time. So, and this might be a question for me. Is it really, that obscenely overpowered if you're getting the same kill times at, what was this, 1,000% in Rage Glacier?
Yeah, 1,000%. I don't think how busted it is shows up as much in Archglacier because you get all those poison stacks.
Right, okay.
If we move to Zamorak, which was the other boss I did for this, and I think I said before how I was basically skipping the mechanics straight away.
Yeah.
At 250%.
Yeah.
That shows all I was doing was SGBing and bulk speccing. And
right.
Getting enough damage.
Like at that point I asked, should mechanic be able to be switched or skipped rather, you know? In that regard. And obviously the bosses are built so that if you do enough damage you will skip them, but that's just another one of those philosophical questions that I like to ask from time to time.
Yeah, again, personally, as someone who likes to see big numbers and be
it makes you
excited
feel
about
good
them,
right now, right?
It feels good, and then like skipping it's like, oh, I finally got that skip. Like that's super exciting. Like I remember getting skips at Raksha and I was like, holy cow, this like insane PR. Like this is awesome. So,
And then we ask, and then you get to the point where you're skipping entire phases of a 250% Zamorak, and then you're recharging at the runes with your adrenaline. Is that healthy? Because after that, you dive straight into more specs. And I guess that's, where it starts to show the power that's been introduced here.
yeah, I mean, so at 250, I'm skipping pretty quickly. At 500, basically what the rotation is after you rapid fire, you bulk, you SGB, and then you get all the adrenaline again, you snapshot, and then bulk. And like it's so much damage. It's crazy. Like that extra adrenaline, you get 110% adrenaline from, because I'm using the archaeology relic to give me 110.
Okay.
And I mean that's 29, that's 4 bulk specs, basically.
And if this is, and see, I'd be interested to see how does this compare to Necromancy at Zamorak then on the live server at a similar enrage. Have you ever done that?
No, because P7 with Necromancy is scary.
Right. Okay.
With the
right.
death scrolls.
Okay. I remember our discussions we had about that when those were being patch noted. In that Zamorak is actually a boss where Necromancy is probably not the best place to use that. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know, maybe I should go back and try it. But like Ps 1 through 6, I could probably just do that and teleport out before I get to P7 and just see how
insane that is.
How quickly I'm skipping. Yeah. I really do think range will be better though.
And see that's where this becomes a really difficult discussion. In that should this all be toned down to a level where it was before, or is it good to introduce this kind of power either through Necromancy or through these kind of range changes to get more people into the boss? And I know the standard line in that, if you're able to do it with Necromancy, you're able to do it with one of the other styles. It's just the equipment investment and learning the different rotations and doing it effectively at that. But Necromancy makes it a hell of a lot easier. And that's, again, what I ask is maybe it's just time for this level of power to go up in game. I don't know.
And I mean, it also depends what they have planned out for the future. I mean, if they have a boss that's going to be even more insane than Solak or AOD, then sure, like you can leave everything how it is and basically scale it to this new boss coming out. We don't know this. I've heard that theory get thrown out. I mean, even with Forecath, people were like, this boss better be really difficult because Necromancy is so busted.
It wasn't.
And it wasn't. But like people thought it would be because of how good Necromancy is. So maybe it's still coming that it'll be a super difficult boss.
I know. I remember. I think one of the mods said it at one point. That Solak was kind of at the edge. It was either Solak or Virago was right at the edge of what was, really acceptable and doable in terms of the mechanics that they could put into the game to really push that difficulty envelope further. So the question is, do you get more difficult than Solak and Virago, right? And at that point, then maybe that you can start to have that question on power. But if you were going to go based on what we see here right now, would you tone things down or would you bring power levels up in the live game based on the beta here?
Mm-hmm. I think you could go either way. I think I would personally lean towards bringing magic and melee up just because I don't like the idea of nerfing Necromancy. But with how new that is.
Right, and imagine how this would look if 8 to 12 months after the new skill comes out, they nerf it into the ground to the point where it only competes against the other styles. Imagine for somebody who started the game on Necromancy, who is a Necromancy peer, let's just say, dare I say that. I don't know if anybody out there like that exists. I don't know if anybody signed up because of Necromancy, but it's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, I if it was 2 to 3 years after Necromancy came out,
you might be
I
able
could
to make
see
that argument.
Yeah.
But right after, you're playing with fire at that point. And that's, like I said, it becomes at that point a discussion of community, because are you trying to make the game playable for people who were already here before and who knew how to do PVM and make it so they're happy and comfortable? Or are you trying to make the game playable for the people who just started PVMing with Necromancy and started doing all those feats and keeping it the way they have learned it? And your answer to that is a community question that, if you answer the wrong way, I think has ramifications on this. And I would not want to be people like Mods Ryan and Sponge and anybody else on the Combat Council at this point in time. So this just feels like a mess. Because I don't see any winning coming out of this, Because if you lower Necromancy and you bring what we have in the beta down, eventually people are going to be upset. If you bring everything up to that same, kind of category where Necromancy sits right now, people are going to be further upset that, it's just, continued to make the game easier. So I don't know how you win at that, and a choice has to be made at some point. But I guess we could just kind of, lean into the beta on this and say, is ranged as it is right now in the beta too powerful if you compare it to Necromancy?
I would lean yes.
Okay. And the reasons being, dare I ask, the Bold Last Guardian and SGB, based on what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think you can throw full arrows into that as well.
That's interesting, because I always see those as, just the unsuspecting default arrow. Why them?
Well, they add a decent amount of damage to the rotations that I'm using. They that's what I use all the time at Stammy. It's just the extra damage that they bring.
Okay, fair enough. All right. What about Solak? How did that go?
Yeah, that was about the same. I think the same sort of idea that with Glacor is I didn't let the poison damage carry me as much in the beta as I did in the live game. So just the damage that came from the Bolg and SGB really helped. You're skipping all the mechanics that I would normally skip. They're about the same kill times. So when I switched to Magic, again, it was the same thing. Like, I didn't really notice anything too different. When I was working on Magic, that's when I'm more focused on the action bar and those sort of changes.
And you don't four-tick with that. You just staff switch for spec, right?
Yep, and yeah, mostly camping dual wield, but occasionally switching to staff for spec.
So we've been talking a lot about range, but how did Magic feel when you used it on the beta?
It really didn't feel too much different. You're not, most of the time, the biggest hit is Omni Power, and since they split that up into 4 hits, you're not hitting the max very often with it. So
Magic is not really affected by the max hit. What about the crit damage changes?
Crit damage, I think, is probably what helped get slightly
because
faster.
Magic was and always has been the crit build.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I think getting that extra 60% crit damage from having 99 Magic was probably something that was helpful.
Okay. Okay. So not too much with magic there then.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, then you'd feel comfortable, using what was there for Solak. Then I guess would be a way of putting it.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Tanis, any questions? Should we move on to the listener questions that we sourced from this?
I guess what would you say the biggest danger would be if it were to move forward?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on this in the pre-show. It's just like in some of the bosses, you're granted extra adrenaline, and that's when it gets super dangerous with how much damage you can deal. If you're putting out multiple bulk specs, if you're putting out multiple overpowered abilities, like that's when you start getting to a dangerous level. So they gotta somehow figure out that, because if you're just 4 or 5 attacks in a row that's hitting over 15k, that's too much.
Yeah. And I wonder what the time frame is on this, because they said treat this as kind of like a release candidate in terms of something to test, but at the same time there needs to be changes in terms of the balancing. Obviously, what I'm wondering is how long do the people like Sponge and Ryan have to deliver this? Because you remember we had that weapon diversity beta many years ago, right? That went off the rails and they had to can because it just took too long. I'm wondering if we get to a similar point with this here, rather.
I wouldn't think so. I think the fact that they said this was a release candidate means that they think they're close. I think there are obviously some things they need to tweak, but I mean, even if they think it's close, I mean, we've seen it before where they release things that probably could have been...
that feel close internally, but when you get, a bunch of cracked PVMers on it, it's an entirely different perspective.
Yes. So, like, I wouldn't be shocked if they make a couple changes and then don't do another beta.
And then just ship it.
Not, but that is a real possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just worries me because we're starting to get into that same sort of EOC territory where there's waffling between two different camps, and it's a question of which are going to have the stakeholders that are going to win out at the end of the day. And I think I know which ones it's going to be. It's obviously going to be the people who were doing PVM before Necromancy. I hate to say it, but I feel like those are the ones that are going to come out winning with this, and whether that means not being as aggressive in the beta as we're seeing right now, and then some changes down the road that adjust the Necromancy damage on the ability side. Because remember when Necromancy was brought down later last year or previous year, it was mainly the conjures that were hit on that. They didn't touch anything with any of the abilities out there. So
yeah.
Interesting times ahead, but we did source some questions from the Discord today on this. So the first one, what changes affect each level of player in the lowest, median, and highest rungs? So I think I can go out on the limb and, just say based on the things that I was most excited about on probably the lowest and into the median tier, it's the changes to the accuracy system, so you don't just flat up miss anymore, and then also the crit changes as well help too, I think, at the lower end.
Yeah, I absolutely love the damage, the hit chance. It is weird because there's not many bosses that
where that's an issue.
You walk into, like it's Virago, AOD, Yakamara. Now, when you're using the full arrows at some points, like even at Zami, you don't have 100% accuracy, but it's like 95, 98, right? So like
which is close enough.
Yeah. So, but the difference between 95% damage that you deal or 95% hit chance is a lot. Because if you go in bulk spec and it hits that 0% or that 5% that's not hitting, that's a lot of adrenaline lost for no damage.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you do it and, okay, you're only going to deal 95% damage, that's still fine. That's still a lot of damage.
Yeah. And, also, even if we bring this down to, Slayer at the at the low to mid levels, for somebody who's training with ranged, you're going to feel that immediately, because there are a ton of misses in this game at the early levels if you're fighting something that's just maybe a little bit too powerful for you. So
Yeah,
they're going to feel that.
And there's still probably areas to safe spot some Slayer monsters. So if you didn't have 100% accuracy, that just, it's you're sitting there not getting attacked and you're just hitting zeros yourself. That's not fun. Like,
no, it's not. And I know that. I know that from old school, because I'm in that level range where that happens. Granted, obviously different combat system, but the idea is the same. Mid-tier, and I think the thing that felt most satisfying to me on this, and it's more of a meta feel than just one specific change, is that it made, at least ranged in my assessment, more competitive with Necromancy without really needing to think about it, which I think was a good thing.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the critical strikes for mid-game, just like,
right.
All right, now you have more access to more critical damage.
Right, because ranged was never really about crit. That was more Magic's thing.
Yep.
So
just like that extra 60% damage when you crit is a lot. I mean, I'm assuming mid-game players are going to have 99 combats.
Yeah.
So you get that
like
extra 60%.
The kind of people who are doing normal mode Reapers, I'd say, is what I'd say mid-tier.
Yep.
That sort of thing in the occasional bossing. And, well, for highest, we've kind of detailed how broken this is at places like Zamorak.
Yep, the damage hit cap going up to...
Yeah, the damage hit cap, and just, in cases where you get tons of adrenaline, that really lets you print the damage out there.
Yeah.
All right. Then the next one, in November and December, there were some JMods publicly talking about the combat beta and using it as a platform for radical design changes, like removing abilities. I think this person's talking about the melee auto attack, making styles more diverse, and questioning if melee should still be two separate skills, and possibly looking at weapon diversity again. But in January now, it looks like that more of the open experimentation stuff really never happened. So the question is, are there any immediate plans to continue on this experimental bandwagon, or could those maybe be introduced later? And obviously, we don't have a JMod answer on this, but I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, in that did the combat beta need to go full experimental on this, or was just kind of a few changes around the edges that really made things for the better here?
Well, I think some of the things that will help melee, and it's something we haven't touched on yet, is the damage ranges. So like, for example, one of the abilities could go from 35% to 188% damage, and it just, you roll a dice and see how much damage you deal, and they're gonna shorten that gap a little bit, so that will be more consistent. Yeah. I think that helps melee a lot. 'Cause, I mean, there's just how many abilities there are. It's confusing. It's like, okay, this one's slice is 75 to 115. Is that good compared to kick, which is 20 to 100%? I don't know. So just like figuring out, updating the tooltips, which is another thing they're going to be doing, and giving a smaller range for these damage will really help melee, I think.
Yeah.
Is it going to change how many weapon changes and armor changes you need mid-fight? No, but it'll at least
and that's an identity problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it's become a style based on bleeds, but also the special attacks of the Zuck Sword, the Tier 92 Whip as the main weapon, the Lang Swords. What am I missing?
Well, you're also supposed to switch helmets occasionally,
right,
between Jaws of the Abyss and the vestments. You get, I don't think ZGS is used as often anymore, but that's still out
that
there.
One's kind of fallen out of favor a bit.
So there's just too many changes.
Right,
Switches.
and
I mean, you got the Spear of Annihilation.
That was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you put this in front of somebody else who's just coming to this game and say, hey, this is how I do, endgame melee combat in RuneScape. Yeah. In this other game, I just equip 2 daggers and off I go.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I still had one of my melee presets because it's no food in there and just switch, switch, switch.
And I question at that point, would that really be an experimental or, kind of pushing the boundary thing to do? Or is that just, quality of life and making it so that its identity isn't so reliant on that?
Yeah, I think they had to fix that problem before they do anything else.
But also,
crazy.
let's be real here. That it's entirely viable to take a Spear of Annihilation or an Ox Scythe into a Slayer task with an EOF'd Dragon Two-Hander, put on an AoE Revolution set, occasionally spec with that EOF Dragon Two-Hander and call it a day, kill everything in the room.
Yeah.
Like, that's a viable melee build. And I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, that's where melee is going to shine, is on those kind of AoE Slayer tasks.
Yeah, Slayer, and I mean, obviously there's still Corp Beast, and I mean, I would do
the Dag King and the Matriarch.
Grex Matriarch. But I mean, I would do some of the God Wars Dungeon 1 in melee too, just because that's
just for like the raw,
do.
just for the raw DPS then that you can crank out.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what were you saying? Previously, what was the ability? You get 2 12k hits, and now obviously you're going to be beyond that. Meteor? Was that
Overpower?
It? Yeah.
Overpowered? What is it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, Overpower.
And once again, we're not melee people here. You used to be, but not anymore.
Yeah.
So. And like I said, that goes back into our former discussion that this is... We're bordering on the rounds of EOC 2.0 here with this. And that's actually the next question. Will the melee meta change? Should it change?
Again, I mean, I don't know. I think...
Like, I feel like for everything we're seeing here, this was not the melee beta. This was the ranged combat beta and make sure magic is okay beta.
Yeah, I think melee's just kind of the forgotten stepchild.
Though there's going to be somebody out there who's going to say that, they've been on the beta with melee and they're actually able to make it perform very well with all their switches and whatnot, but, none of us have that here. And I did actually want to try and find somebody for the show, but I wasn't able to for that, so.
Yeah, I think it in scenarios can be very good with how much... I mean, melee was the one that took the biggest hit from the damage cap being at 12k.
Yeah.
I mean, there's multiple abilities that can hit that pretty easily. So getting that boost will be good. But again, if you're at Zamorak and, he does the first spec that, hits you with melee and then puts the smoke on the ground, well, you have all the smoke now because you're standing at melee range. If you're at Yakamaru, you have to pray magic instead of pray range because he hits a different style if you're in melee range. It almost at times feels like a different game.
Yeah.
When you're standing that close to the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. And also going forward, will Necromancy still be the easy setup with tier 95 armor and tier 90 weapons? It'll work in most bosses besides the bosses that forbid those uses of mechanics.
I think so. I mean, just because anyone in this game can sit down for a little bit and go earn the tier 90 Necromancy armor. It's relatively cheap compared to all the other tier 90s. And then that tier 90 armor is good enough to go fight Raziel to go get the tier 95. Like, there is a straightforward path.
It was clearly designed for that, and we've long spoke here at the podcast that you don't need tier 90 power armor and tier 90 weapons to be effective. Really, 80 is good, and I'd be comfortable even with tier 80 necromancy weapons. So yeah, the answer to that is yes, unless they nerf necromancy, which, folks listening to this show, I know you guys are out there. If that ever happens, you guys need to stand up loud and, make yourself known about that. So overall, ship it or wait?
We're here. We're dead. Get used to it.
I'd say we're close. I wouldn't want to see this exact version go live, but I think it's close. I could see it coming out in the next month.
Okay, so basically, if we were to summarize, then just work on the balance from the big adrenaline dump, specifically in ranged, Bow of the Last Guardian, Saradomin Godbow, and any other big damage dumping abilities that seem to be, I guess, overperforming at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, the beta's still up, people. If you have a ranged combat set, magic combat set, or even a melee combat set, jump in there and let them know how it's going, because that was one thing I noticed on the beta post, is that they were very clear, very, very clear, that they want everybody to take part in this, regardless of how you do your combat. So let it be known, go into the beta. The instructions are linked in their post. If it doesn't work immediately, end the Jagex launcher. If it doesn't work after that, still go into Task Manager and force kill all of the Jagex launcher processes, and then try again, and then you should be good to go. And you should be in right away. Just make sure you have everything that you need supply-wise, though. We said this last week. Make sure you have everything supply-wise, or else you're not going to be able to get those, because, of course, there won't be things being sold on the GE. So, all right, and I should clarify this. I don't know if I will have made this clear at the time. This portion of the show here about the combat beta was recorded on Thursday, but we will be gathering on Friday afternoon, a couple of us, to talk about the live stream of upcoming content that was there, and Mod Keeper's post as well that's on the way. And the reason I mentioned that is because the thing that was on the main news post this week that, of course, raised the eyebrows of some people in the community was the new Djinn Crown Necromancy outfit that has the city of Blue Scale on it. And, I mean, it's a nice outfit. I don't necessarily know that I'd pay 470 rune coins for this. It's not necessarily my style. Either of you guys buying this?
I already did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I had rune coins sitting around, so I don't know. It looked good with soul dice, which I have a soul die and have SOA.
Right.
So that's why I did it.
Fair enough.
Mainly for that reason.
Fair enough. Tannis?
Yeah, I don't really. It's not really my kind of style. But I mean, this is what people have said they wanted, right? It's more cosmetics.
Direct-to-purchase cosmetics as well that aren't on Treasure Hunter.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the way to do it.
And maybe that's why you bought. Well, you said why you bought it, Bears. But I was just gonna say, maybe that's why some people will just buy it to show support for this method of monetization out there. Because I remember a time when they said, "Yeah, we want to move away from Treasure Hunter for our main monetization," and obviously that never happened. So
yeah, I mean, I think I spent rune coins on this, but I didn't have any interest in getting more keys to get any of those cosmetics.
The Raziel ones from last week.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That actually annoyed me because I ended up with an odd amount of keys, and I would have been able to purchase 2 of the pieces. So it's gone for who knows how long.
Yep.
So those tokens are just going to sit in my inventory till then. But Moving on to patch notes right now. Some changes from the community hit list stuff last week. Storing noted items in the herb bag will no longer exceed the limit of the herb bag. Oops, somebody was really happy here for a few days.
Yeah.
Runes in Phase 7 of Zamorak will once again heal above their max HP on death, and values have been slightly adjusted to count for solo mode, having halved rune HP to reduce the chance of double killing runes. What does this mean, Bears? What does this mean, Bears? I've never done Zamorak to Phase 7.
So in B7 you have to kill a rune, and solo mode they have 12,500 HP. So basically right at that hit cap, right? Yeah. So there's been times where I put a bleed on it and then did my bulk spec, and it was on where it was going to hit twice. Like the spec was going to hit twice. And it dealt 12,000 damage on the first one, which got it down to 6k again. And then the second hit the rune and it killed me. So it just like stopped. It basically killed yourself from doing it.
Okay, so this is just basically making it so that solo is easier to work around then.
So I was super excited last week when they were like, "Oh, solo runes got halved." I'm like, "Let's go!" And my first 5 attempts, I killed myself because I was dealing too much damage to the rune.
Oh God! Okay.
So I'm glad they changed those because that made that significantly easier.
Yeah, and for people wondering just exactly why has he never done 100% enrage Zamorak before? Well, there was a story from back when Zamorak came out about the boss high scores at the time, where somebody for a while had the slowest Zamorak kill time in all of RuneScape on the high scores, and I was eventually bested by 2 people on this, but my Zamorak kill time that's on the high scores to this day was about 27 minutes. So since then, I've not actually gone back because I don't want to give up that high score spot. 27 minutes and 44 seconds, ranked 25,612 out of 25,614.
I was on that podcast when Sammy.
Oh, I know.
I remember that, and I could not believe. Like, I was more impressed you stayed alive for 25 minutes.
That's the exact same reaction I got from a lot of people as well.
Ooh.
They thought it was a genuine accomplishment.
Yeah.
Oh, right. You were on that episode. That's when. Oh yeah, that's when Tanis was out sick with your stomach malady.
Yep.
Everything good from that now?
Of course.
Necromancy changes. Here's some good ones. It's not immediately clear what this means, but it's going to be hilarious once I explain what these two are about. Fixed an issue where Necromancy attacks were incorrectly being considered as a weakness for Raziel, the first Necromancer, granting a higher base hit chance than intended. And increased the penalty for Necromancy equipment when used in conjunction with equipment from other styles to better reflect the intention of Necromancy sitting outside the combat triangle, i.e. Necromancy weapon while wearing melee armor, or melee weapon while wearing Necromancy armor.
You know what that patch note kind of said to me, Shane?
What's that?
They
don't want people using Necromancy weapons with Crypt Bloom.
Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that. I was just thinking that, like, because you can get your own Necromancy gear, that's why it's that's why it's a fourth combat style. If you can interchange it, if you can wear it with the other, and do other styles, then I figure people would really be throwing a fit about that.
Well, that's the thing. People had been doing that, and what these two patch notes were designed to combat was the strategy that arose. And if anybody's been on RuneScape YouTube in a while, you would have seen that there was a guide floating around for fully AFK Raziel.
See, I don't think
And that's what this was about. Both of
AFK,
these.
nor do I think too easy when I think Raziel, since I have.
It was entirely
Cheating.
possible. It was entirely possible to kill the boss on Revolution without any inputs.
Huh. Well,
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I wish I'd figured that out. I could have at least got finished the quest. Oh well.
But story mode's not even that difficult. We can get you through that at some point. I'm fairly
Yeah, I mean
certain.
it's been close, but
Yeah. But see, these are the kind of weird edge cases that are like this that just come out and about. Bears, were you aware that, there was people out there that were doing Raziel AFK with Crypt Bloom and whatnot to kind of just farm it?
I think I saw a video of it. I never looked into it.
No, why would we, right? Like, Raziel's actually a fun boss once you get it down.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised by it. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, even the AFK Care Pack guide uses Crypt Bloom while using ranged, so
Yeah.
or at least some Crypt Bloom. So like, it's not completely out
Right,
of the.
but and I mean, you're killing it, but at that point, you're not making money because you're not doing it effectively. So
Yeah.
I mean, you take your pick either way. In other patch notes this week, several decimal separators have been added across the game. The one I saw here was in the coin pouch, for example. Also, whenever the Dark Facet of Luck doubles a clue casket, people will now receive a chat message in case they miss the object box due to it being too fast. And then, in general, patch notes this week shows the kind of spaghetti code we deal with in this game. Fixed an issue with Power Burst potions having an elongated cooldown for some players affected by the login lockout.
holy.
When was
Wow.
that? Like 2021?
Yes.
Like a year ago. Oh no, it's 2 years ago?
2021.
Close to
Shit,
3 years
3
ago.
years ago, god damn.
Like, I didn't think I'd ever hear that phrase again. I still have PTSD
Were you
from
locked
it. I didn't
out?
even get no. And I just like remember seeing it on every single update for 3 months. I'm like, oh boy.
Well, I mean, at least they had the communication team out there dealing with it, and they brought the server guys out, and Mod Warden was out a lot. And I remember, Tanis, you said there was this one server guy you wouldn't want to get on the opposite end of based on how he talked and carried himself on the live stream.
Yeah, I don't remember who that was.
I don't either.
Do you remember that?
But I do remember us having that discussion. The treasure rest animation showed no longer correctly display incorrectly in the customization interface, and the reason I mentioned this one is I mentioned at the top of the show a random emote being included with one of the bonds that we're going to be giving away, and this happens to be the one that I think I'm giving away on this. I might have to double check this, but I think that's the one that it is. Blue dragon scales can now be banked by Sign of the Porter.
This was the coolest patch note I saw in
Because it's kind of just sandwiched in there between everything else, and it's kind of like a nothing patch note, but it's in the same vein of, collecting the Nightshade in the Scavid Cave with porters, because this potentially, and I mean, we'd have to look at what the exact breakdown of a charge is versus that, but if you're an Iron Man character and you're making anti-dragon fire potions, you want this.
Yes,
Oh,
I was
well,
super
yeah.
excited on my Iron Man for that because I remember I was just there recently. Like, oh, I'm just gonna walk around this dungeon and collect the dust that's on the ground. This is cool. You get 28 at a time.
And then you got to teleport back and walk back. Yeah, not fun at all. Not fun at all. But that's it for the patch notes this week. All right, with that, we're going to start off and move into our achievements. I don't think there's much else to say on the patch notes this week. Starting off, we have Eric's with 99 Necromancy on the 31st, XOX Scotty XOX with 120 Fishing and 120 Woodcutting, also on the 31st. Then we have Mej Quest with 99 Smithing on the 30th.
Congrats. We got Stantham Gum with 99 Necromancy on the 28th. Scotty with 120 Necromancy and Range again on the 28th.
All right, and then we have Tim 2 with a trio of 120s with Necromancy, Firemaking, and Woodcutting, all on the 27th. Very nice. And then we have Duro with 99 Necromancy on the 26th.
Well done, everybody. Well done. And of course,
Yeah.
just a brief note: Double XP we learned is coming on the 16th to the 26th. So set your calendars for that.
See a bunch more of these 120s. This is quite the 120 spread here.
Yeah, I'm gonna get 120 Necromancy on this one, I think.
There you go.
Nice.
But if you want to appear on the podcast, update.show/help. If you have always wanted to be on RSBANDB Update or a podcast in general, you think you might have something interesting to add and something to say, just fill out that form. And the biggest thing, of course, is to let us know how to contact you and why you think you'd be a good addition to be on the podcast. Update.show/help. And with that, Bears has the pick of the week from somebody in Eastern Canada.
Yeah. So you've probably seen some of him on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, but it's Connor Price. He's a hip hop rapper from Toronto. I started to hear him late summer this past year. Really started to listen to him in August, and I reached his 0.1% top listeners on Spotify this past year of 2023. So as you can see, I've kind of enjoyed him. His big thing is the YouTube Shorts and TikToks, where he's has a weird instrument, like Tanis was saying. He's seen one where he grabbed a carrot and turned it into a flute, and then dropped a beat from there. He makes his own beats. He makes his own music. He's not signed with the label or anything, so he doesn't release albums. It's just one song every about 2 to 3 weeks. So every 2 to 3 weeks, you get that fill of a new song, and you start to enjoy it, and then by the time you start getting sick of it, boom, new one gets dropped. His biggest thing is, I think last year he started this series where he spun a globe, closed his eyes, and went to a country, and then he found someone from that country and collabed with them. So he got some people from Japan,
there's some good ones.
from Africa, Brazil. He's fantastic. I really enjoy him. I'm hoping to be even higher than 0.1% this year. And Spotify, I mean, his playlist is probably on for about 7 or 8 hours a day while I'm working. So I think I'll get there.
And didn't you say his music was also used something with the Raptors or something, or he's just a fan of them?
So he's a big fan of the Raptors. He does have a song that raps about them when they won the championship a couple years ago. And then the clip that's linked in our show notes is him explaining how one of his songs went viral. And my favorite line from it is, even Taylor Swift's boyfriend and his friends used it in a TikTok. So obviously talking about Travis Kelce. So that was just kind of funny little things. Travis Kelce's a big name, but Taylor Swift is even bigger. So yeah.
Yeah, and she's bringing some controversy around her recently this week too. So interesting you bring her up on that. But that's a topic for another show as it is. Yeah, that's good. And as per usual with these musical picks, I don't show the videos and I don't play the audio, because if I do that, there's a very real chance that this portion of Update will just cease to exist on YouTube, and I don't want that happening. So if you want to see Bear's pick of the week, just head on over to update.show and you'll find it there. So, all right, what have you been doing on RS, Tanis?
Preparing for double XP and didn't even know it.
Okay.
I can say they released that info 12 hours ago, not even.
No, I mean I've just been working at the farm on some arrow shafts and shells and all that stuff.
So is this going to be a 120 or 200?
Probably 120.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
It'll be interesting. I haven't, like I'm kind of morally opposed to math, and so we're just gonna
Aren't we all?
see. Yeah, I mean, we're just
No.
gonna see how it works out. Like I'm just gonna do it until I run out of
So
stuff.
it's like throwing some spaghetti at the
that
wall
more
then
than
and hoping
those.
for the best.
Yeah, we're just gonna see how it turns out.
Oh, that makes me twitch because I know you could plan it so much better.
But
What's
where's
so
the
fun
fun
in
in
that,
that? Yeah, it's about the journey, Shane.
Fine.
Journey.
Fine. How about you, Bears?
So I'm starting a PVM event tomorrow. So I'm excited for that. But in the meantime, I just finished 200 mil Necromancy and hit 5 bill total XP. So we're getting close to that 5.8 mark that I've been slowly working towards. And then if I have AFK time that I don't want to spend skilling, I'll go to a boss and keep working on Golden Reaper, I guess. But that's years away.
Yeah, and you know that what you've described is effectively the RS3 endgame, I think. So
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. As for me this week, aside from the beta stuff that I mentioned and another dab in it, I did a couple Reapers. Nothing really that amazing. A couple Graradars, Vindicta, that sort of thing. But one thing I actually did do, just out of the blue, just for the hell of it, is I actually went back to Vorkath.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it was good. I did normal mode. I eased into it by turning off a couple of the mechanics to start with. But by the end of the evening, I was actually able to get it down to a point where I was actually able to do the Vorkath normal mode skip. So I was actually very proud of that.
Nice.
Yep.
And effectively what that means for people unaware is that when Vorkath is up flying away, you kill Zamorak in that time while Vorkath is gone, and that just ends the boss fight when Vorkath comes back. So I'd like to work my way up to hard mode there, but I still I'm not at a point where I can in effect just kind of cruise through that, getting the skips like I can cruise through, something like Raziel or hard mode Carapac, if that makes sense. I don't know why. I don't know what's different there. But
I think the issue the issue would be with a lot of people is the two mechanics at once, or the kind of defending against two things at once is tough.
Yeah, because I'll be fine fighting just against Vorkath, but then once it comes to fight Zamorak, there will be just sometimes where I'll just start taking tons and tons of damage, and I have to start mitigating that.
Yeah.
So
have you tried hard mode in group or anything?
No, I haven't. And I know you and I were talking about doing that before Christmas, but we never got around to that. Maybe we should do that at some point.
Yeah, I'd be happy. I mean, I think in groups usually you get one person tanking each one, so it really helps.
And then the other person
confusion.
Then the other person just lets the DPS go. Yeah. That's actually a neat idea about a way to do it. But I still think we kind of undersold Vorkath too when we did that episode, because we didn't necessarily dedicate enough time as we should have, I think, to the armor. Because that's another thing that we didn't talk about in the beta, that your beta combat endeavors that you were doing in ranged were with the new Elite Dracolich.
Yeah. I think at the time, it usually takes a couple weeks to figure out how good an item is.
Until you get your hands on it.
Yeah. So it's tough to week of okay, how good is this armor? Where will
the theory crafting it looked okay, but in practice you get it on and you're using a bow. It's miraculous almost, isn't it?
Yeah, rapid fire is all of a sudden your best ability.
Yeah.
You gain adrenaline from it, and then it makes crits happen more. That's a win-win.
Money printer, as they say. But alrighty, well, that's pretty much it for this episode of RSBANDB Update. So thank you, Bears, for doing this and braving the combat beta, though from the sounds of it, you probably actually had some fun with it.
I did. This was the first time in a while that I've logged into the beta and it hasn't been laggy like crazy. So
yeah, because I was able to get in
there and play.
I think they use a Euro server for it, dare I say. So
yeah. And usually I'm like signing in when there's a million other people in, and it's so bad. But
yeah,
I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and hopefully we have pushed that discussion in the right direction on that. So fingers crossed everything turns out the way it should. But nonetheless, Tanis and I will be back next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. You good, Tanis? Anything else to say before we go?
No, Bear's hit it on the head. Like I was just gonna say that, we're like 6 weeks, 8 weeks past forecast release, so there's a lot of hindsight now. It's changed some. We didn't have the same access to that kind of information week of release.
Yeah, theory crafting can only take you so far on that. So
yeah.
Yep.
All right. If you want the podcast delivered automatically to you, best way to do that is to subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Pocket Casts, and more. And, of course, YouTube as well, youtube.com/RSBNB. Do like and subscribe there. Greatly helps the channel out, but we'll be back next week for another episode of RSBNB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
See ya.
See you guys.